What is a land flowing with milk and honey? It's not just pretty words talking about a land that is otherwise nondescript. No, he's being actually quite descriptive here. Moses is receiving some information about the destiny of the Israelites. The promised land, a land of milk and honey. Milk, meaning a place where your cattle can graze, and honey means bees. Bees indicate farmland. So a land of milk and honey is not a single type of land. It's a place where those who have cattle can exist and those who want to farm can exist. You keep those places separate. A good land is a place where they can all dwell together. Well, hello, my dear friends. Welcome back to Embrace the Question. We are in our third chapter of Exodus in our Bible Study with Me journey through Exodus. And I would not hesitate to say that this is by far the deepest chapter that we have seen yet. And we've done all of Genesis. There are a lot of deep wells in Genesis from which you could draw a lifetime worth of sermons. I am sure of it. But this one, most scholars would probably laugh if we told them we were trying to take Exodus 3 in a single session and do it any kind of justice. And I can't really argue with that. So we're just going to do our best. I'm going to point you to some very deep holes, very deep wells that can be explored. And hopefully at some point you will be able to circle back around and take a closer look at some of these. But let's take a look at Exodus chapter 3 because, wow, this one's going to be fun. All right, Exodus chapter 3, verse 1. And it's also going to be a lot of stopping by me, a lot of commentary here, because every verse seems to offer something. So verse 1, now Moses was keeping the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian. He's a priest. He's a priest. That's something to remember. And he led his flock to the west side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. All right, let's stop. Two things. Yes, he's a priest. A priest of what? Is Jethro a believer? Well, we find out later in Exodus 18-ish, I think it is, that Jethro is offering sacrifices, burnt offerings, to God. So I don't know if he is a follower of Yahweh here, or if somewhere in the journey he becomes a follower of Yahweh. That to me is not clear, and it's certainly not made clear here. But again, an area that can be studied out if you're interested in Jethro. I think Jethro is a very interesting character. The father-in-law of Moses, an advisor to Moses, someone who plays a part in the Exodus. Okay, number 2 about this verse is Horeb, the mountain of God. Most would think that Sinai is the mountain of God, and many think perhaps that Horeb and Sinai are one and the same because it's known as the mountain of God here. It's like more of a foreshadowing. It's like when in Genesis it talks about Ramses before Ramses is built. Okay, more of a foreshadowing. So could it be that Horeb and Sinai are the same? Yes, it could be. And I would tend to lean that way because of the mountain of God reference. Let's keep going on that. Verse 2, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. Now you know where we're at. We're at the famous burning bush story. He looked, and behold, the bush was burning, yet it was not consumed. All right, the angel of the Lord appeared. Who is the angel of the Lord? Most would say a pre-incarnate Jesus Christ would be the angel of the Lord. A theophany, I think, is the smart religious guy term for it. The angel of the Lord appeared. Read Revelation chapter 1, verses 12 and 13. What do we see in Revelation 1? We see Jesus standing in the midst of a bunch of candlesticks, 7 to be exact. He's standing in the midst of a menorah, okay? I think of it as a giant menorah where he is like the center flame. He's the center servant lamp of this giant menorah. What we're learning is that this is an official decorative recreation of the burning bush. To me, that was a mind blower. The burning bush? So why would he be doing that? Why would the burning bush be recreated as a menorah, a burning golden bush? What is that all about? And we find that many of the things we run across in this Exodus, which is why we wanted to go through this so badly. Many of the things we run across in the Exodus are temple furnishings. The burning bush. We have the bread that's going to be appearing on the ground, right? What's in the temple? Bread, the table of showbread. We have the mountain of God. What's it famous for? Smoking, lightning, and thundering. What do we have in the temple? We have incense that's smoking, and we have fire pots. What do we have as far as the golden laver? Well, we have Israel has gone through the Red Sea. Metaphorically, they have walked through the water and been cleansed from their past, never to go back again. That's the goal. Don't go back to Egypt. All right, so we have all of this temple furniture showing up in very big ways in the wilderness here and throughout Exodus. It's a fascinating thing. Now, why? Why would we even be doing that? I mean, what's the temple a picture of? And you can go all the way back to the garden where we have Adam and Eve. They're in they're in the garden of God, the paradise of God. It's his presence, right? It's his presence. And in his presence, there is no lack. So you've got bread all the time. You've got the water. Jesus says, I am the living water, right? There is a river running through the garden of God that splits into 4 heads, it says. Okay? What else do we have? We have a tree of life. You could call it a bush. I mean, a very large one, but it's all the same imagery. So we have this this propagation of a picture of where God's presence is. All of this exists. He wants to be surrounded with his provision, but not only that, he wants to invite you into that. He wants to invite you into his presence where there is provision of all of these things. Mind you, a tree to a desert person is a lovely thing. It's a rare thing. Provides shade, provides possibly fruit. It's shelter from the sun. It's life. So all of this is from the perspective of someone walking through the desert. here we are. We're not even out of verse 2 yet. Hence, people laughing at us for trying this chapter 3 in a half hour or less. Let's continue. Verse 3. No, we can't even do that, really. We're not done with chapter 2, or verse 2. And he looked, and behold, the bush was burning, and yet not consumed. Burning, but not consumed. This speaks of, again, the presence of God, always burning, but never consumed. It speaks of passion. It speaks of that which he placed into us, Holy Spirit, something that's always burning, that it's a refining fire, but it's also an impassioned force within us, right? And you're not consumed by it. And that in itself is another study, is all of these things that man creates, especially these energy sources, they all consume things, right? What do you know that provides you energy that isn't consumed? Everything. Everything that we know of is consumed. But everything that we can't touch, that is of God, i.e. in the physical world, our only example really is the sun, is our only example of that which isn't consumed. It burns all the time, but is never consumed. That's him. Not physically him, but it's our best physical example of him, which in the Hebrew is almost the same word, shemesh and shemesh. They're very similar words, and they both point to him, never consumed. So here we have a bush burning, not consumed. Curious enough. Verse 3, and Moses said, I will turn aside to see this great sight, why the bush is not burned, or why the bush is not burned up. Particularly, it's been said that, forest fires, especially in our hemisphere, not rare. The desert's a dry place. There are lightning storms in the desert that offer no rain at all, but offer a lot of lightning. So there are fires in the desert. What makes this stand out is that this bush isn't burning up. It's just burning. So Moses says to himself, I've got to see this. This is a great sight. This bush isn't burning up. Verse 4. When the Lord saw that he turned aside to see, God called to him out of the bush, Moses, Moses. And he said, here I am. All right, two things. It's only when you turn aside to see. It's only when you decide, I am going to pursue this. This is a message for somebody out there that's in a process that you've got questions about. You have more questions than answers. But I am offering you this bit of spiritual advice. It's only those who pursue that God is going to give the revelation to. I will turn aside to see this great sight. And then the Lord saw that he turned aside to see. The Lord saw that he turned aside to see. And then he called out to him. So it's when you make your move to pursue, that's when you're going to get your direction. And maybe not going to get it until you decide you're going to pursue something. All right? God calls out to him, Moses, Moses. That's a double, right? It's like Abraham. And then I think again, that was, didn't he say Abraham when he was about to kill Isaac on the altar? It's an emphatic, I want your attention. Same thing happened to Jacob, I'm fairly certain. Moses. And he says, here I am. All right. Verse 5, and he says, do not come near, take your sandals off your feet, for this place on which you are standing is holy ground. I read some commentary on this. Don't think it's more than it says. Some offered that perhaps it was holy ground. It was like an ancient temple. No. Had it been such a thing, then none of this would have been a surprise to Moses. None of it would have needed explanation. And yet here it is begging all of that. So I don't buy that. God is there, okay? And that's what makes it holy. All right. Verse 6. Let's scroll. Verse 6. And he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he is afraid to look at God. Moses isn't a dummy. He knows who Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are. He is a Hebrew, and he knows the stories. In fact, Moses is the one that has written Torah, right? He's the main writer of Torah. There are probably other people that have tossed in some writing, especially when Moses can't, right? Moses, after all, dies before the Torah is complete. All that to say, Moses knows his history. He's going to write most of this. All right, let's keep going. Verse 7. Then the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt, and have heard their cry, Zedekah in the Hebrew, heard their cry because of their taskmasters. I know their sufferings. What was the last verse in chapter 2? I know about what you are going through. All right, he is reiterating that. I know their sufferings, verse 8, and I have come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them up out of that land to a good and broad land, a land flowing with milk and honey, to the place of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. This is an interesting verse. I have come down to deliver them. The last time we heard that language, I believe, was when he came down to look at Babel and what they were building. What's the point? The point is he's coming down to see those who are afflicting Moses' people. He is in a lofty place. He is well above their plight and their danger. Pharaoh does not pose a problem to God. He's got to come down to even see what Pharaoh is up to. It's an intentional language. I've come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to do what? To bring them up out of that land. You know what? God is always interested in bringing you up. He comes down only to bring you up. All right, that should preach somewhere. That's a Bible study for you. He's coming down to bring them up out of that land to a good and broad land, a land flowing with milk and honey. What is that? What is a land flowing with milk and honey? It's not just pretty words talking about a land that is otherwise nondescript. No, he's being actually quite descriptive here. Moses is receiving some information about the destiny of the Israelites. The promised land, a land of milk and honey. Milk, meaning a place where your cattle can graze. And honey means bees. Bees indicate farmland. So a land of milk and honey is not a single type of land. It's a place where those who have cattle can exist and those who want to farm can exist. You keep those places separate. A good land is a place where they can all dwell together. That's a good land. It's like grandpa likes to raise cows, but dad likes to farm. They don't have to live miles and miles and miles from each other anymore. A good land is a land of milk and honey. That is what God is telling him is in their future. Pretty cool stuff. All right, so to the place of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. What is he saying? He's saying, I'm going to bring you up out of Egypt to a wonderful place full of people that are going to scare the living daylights out of you. Because all of these guys, all of these people groups are giants. They're big people. They are going to make you feel like grasshoppers. They are going to be scary, intimidating. But you don't know that yet. You don't know what these guys are like because you've never seen them. You've never been to any of their lands. All you know is, I've promised you something good. What's God promising you that's good? Did you know that it may be in a place that's really scary? How good a news is that? It just might be that way because he is going to bring you to a place where you can exist in peace. That must mean he has given you the power and the authority over whatever exists in that place right now. Okay, it's all good. So take heart. If you're in a place where you're a little bit afraid, you're intimidated, maybe that's a place where you're supposed to be, and it's a place where you're supposed to flourish. Could be. That's the message to Moses and Israel. All right? Verse 9, and now, behold, the cry of the people of Israel has come to me, and I have also seen the oppression with which the Egyptians oppressed them. Come, I will send you to Pharaoh, that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. All right. I like where this is going. Verse 11. This question. And Moses said to God, but who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the children of Israel out of Egypt? Love the question. Who am I that I should do this? Remember, Moses has been brought up in the palace. He's been brought up in Pharaoh's house. He's been brought up as royalty. What's the key? What's the point? The point is this. You cannot free a people enslaved if you also are enslaved. You have to be royalty. You have to have a royal mindset in order to set other people free, which is why God chose Moses. This is why he was brought up in the palace in the first place, because he's the one that's got to set the people free. All right, God's going to work through him. All right. Verse 12. And he said, but I will be with you, and this shall be a sign for you, that I have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall serve God on this mountain, Horeb, Sinai, right? We believe they're the same. I believe they're the same. All right. Verse 13. Then Moses said to God, if I come to the people of Israel and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they ask me, what is his name? What shall I say to them? To me, that's a little odd. I mean, what name do you think they are expecting? It's almost like they know his name and it's a secret. And if Moses knows it, then Okay, we'll follow you. But if Moses doesn't know it, well, then no credibility. That's what it seems like, right? What shall I say to them? Verse 14, God said to Moses, I am who I am. And he said, say this to the people of Israel, I am has sent me to you. It's like the people will know that I am is the one that is sending Moses. Interesting. Definitely worth study, right? Verse 15. God also said to Moses, say this to the people of Israel, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has sent me to you. This they would know. This is my name forever, and thus I am to be remembered throughout all generations. Go and gather the elders of Israel together and say to them, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, of Isaac, and of Jacob, has appeared to me, saying, I have observed you and what has been done to you in Egypt, and I promise that I will bring you up out of the affliction of Egypt to the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, the Jebusites, a land flowing with milk and honey. Okay, again, there's a lot there. He's saying, tell them that the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is the one that's going to bring you out of this. What would you say? What would you say if God had said, I have observed what's being done to you? I have observed, meaning I have been focused on what you have been going through. How would that make you feel? I think it might make you feel comforted, right? Because a lot of times our discomfort, our fear is based on, well, God's not paying really a lot of attention to me. He's not seeing how much pain I'm in. He doesn't know all these fears I have. And what God is saying here is, I know exactly what you're going through. I have observed you. I've been watching you. And I'm going to do something about it. I think that might make you feel pretty well, right? I would feel good about that. What he's not explaining to them is that I am going to deliver you out of this land into the land of the Canaanites, Hittites, Jebusites, all the ites. A place that's pretty scary. A place where you are going to have to keep your eyes on me. We know they don't exactly do really well at that most of the time. Hopefully we do better. Hopefully in our own lives we do a little better. We learn from this, right? Okay, verse 18. And they will listen to your voice, Moses, and you and the elders of Israel shall go to the king of Egypt and say to him, the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us. And now please let us go a 3 days journey into the wilderness that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God. But I know that the king of Egypt will not let you go unless compelled by a mighty hand. I want to stop right there. First of all, 3 days into the wilderness. 3 days in the wilderness. That's interesting. That's an interesting number. Why 3 days? Why not 2 days? Wouldn't a day trip into the wilderness be okay? Answer, no. 3 days, there's something to this. There's a reason why he wants them 3 days away. But there's also a reason why Pharaoh has a big problem with letting them go at all. But when he finally relents, he says, I'll let you go, but you can't take your cattle with you. Why? Well, he wants to make sure that they'll come back, for one. Nobody's going to leave all their earthly wealth tied up in their cattle. The overarching picture, though, is Pharaoh being the enemy, right? The devil, Lucifer, if you will, doesn't want you to have the ability to sacrifice. He wants to take away your sacrifice. So he'll let you go, but you can't take the animals with you. He'll always attack your sacrifice, whatever that is. And I'm not saying that we live by sacrifices today, especially those in Jesus. He's our sacrifice. But now maybe you have an idea of why there was such warfare against Jesus fulfilling his mission, because the enemy never wanted a sacrifice to be made on our behalf. He attacks the sacrifice. Okay? I get pretty good revelation. Verse 19. Already covered that. I know the king of Egypt will not let you go unless, why? Unless he's compelled by a mighty hand. I'm going to have to force him to let you go. I'm going to have to twist his arm heavily. And we know that happens. Verse 20. So I will stretch out my hand and strike Egypt with all the wonders that I will do in it. After that, he will let you go. And I will give this people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. And when you go, you shall not go empty, but each woman shall ask of her neighbor and any woman who lives in her house for silver and gold jewelry and for clothing. You shall put them on your sons and on your daughters, so you shall plunder the Egyptians. Interesting, though, that God is prophesying the end in the beginning. We are at the very beginning of Exodus. Moses is not even a player yet to his people. He's dwelling in the house of his father-in-law out in the wilderness outside of Egypt. And yet the entire story, his entire journey has just been prophesied to him. That's pretty crazy. God's given us the answer before the journey's even started. This is what's going to happen. This is how it's going to happen. This is where you're going to end up. You're not going empty-handed. You're going to go with riches. Interesting stuff. That is Exodus 3. Folks, listen to me now. At least go to solwaycoffee.com. Read the story. Read the story. If you can get a box of K-Cups or something for your Sunday school group, that would help a lot. Push the kingdom cause across the pond, we call it the Atlantic Ocean, to a little nation called Scotland. That's what this is for. Trying to reach a people with some really good news. And that's a really good coffee. So do that. That'll really help us out, okay? Also, please visit the blog, visit the Patreon page. There's a lot of videos there for members that I just can't get them to publish on YouTube. They'll block them. So if you're interested in some extra videos, especially on The Chosen, visit the Patreon page. The link's in the notes. And hey, membership's cheap, $5 a cup of coffee, right? Or if you'd like to support me, you can do the same on the blog page, the Buy Me a Coffee page, and it also is $5 a month, and allows me to do a lot of neat things, like give to my friends over in Uganda. Okay, I want to do a whole video on those guys at some point and let you see how they live. Then you know why it's so easy to give, because wow, they can put that money to a million uses, and it seems to go a lot further there than it does here. But anyway, I hope you're enjoying this study in Exodus. Hope you guys have a blessed week, and I will see you very, very soon. Peace.